All right, welcome everybody to, we're going to do this as a podcast too. So if you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, welcome to Sweet Pea Pediatric, Peds Therapy Collective, whatever you know me as. I'm here to support you and the therapist. And today I have with me Caroline Foreman, who's a speech language pathologist. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you.
And I'll just give you a little bit of a background, small background of how Caroline and I know each other. We actually share a mutual client. We don't work for the same company, and we do in-home sessions together traditionally. We do a lot of co-visits and overlapping visits. And so we do have that relationship. So when we moved online a couple of weeks ago, I don't think I was nervous about it, but I was just unsure of maybe how the session was going to go, because we do really take the lead in home, and mom kind of sits back and watches and then participates a little bit, but this was going to be a completely different. So I wanted to bring Caroline on because it was a wonderful session, and we had another one yesterday, and I just wanted to really share how when we have doubts, when we have uncertainties, how sometimes we just have to go and do it anyway. So Caroline, did you want to add anything about yourself or telehealth?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a speech therapist for about 2 years. I currently work for Children's Therapy Services of Colorado. So we provide services to kids under 3 in the home, early intervention, and kids over 3 in the office. So it's been kind of a change for me. I've never done teletherapy. I think this is my second week doing it. So I've really kind of on the forefront have been doing a lot of research, following a lot of groups on Facebook, just kind of figuring out how can I change my service delivery model in a way that's going to benefit these families and these kids in a way that would, kind of resemble how it's working in the home. So, that's been kind of tough. These are kind of unsettling times, and everyone's kind of being pushed to do something that might be a little uncomfortable. But I think, if you can go into it and think, okay, I'm going to learn something completely new. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but this is what is going to help me grow as a clinician. I think you have a lot to gain from that if you kind of go in with that perspective. And, give yourself the first week. You pretty much just spend time with the family, observe them, see what they typically do. The cool thing about teletherapy is you can kind of rearrange your schedule because you're not having to commute, you're not having to drive, have that 15-minute gap between clients, which, sometimes we still need, but it is also nice to kind of rearrange your schedule so it's efficient. So spend that first session with them, even, first or second, watching them during routines you may not normally get to see them, and kind of just sit back and look at how they usually interact with their child, because I will personally say, although we're supposed to go in bagless and it's supposed to be parent coaching, sometimes that can be kind of tough, especially as a new clinician, giving that feedback to parents. So it is kind of nice. This is going to be very uncomfortable, but it's great for you because it gives you a chance to push yourself, really apply that parent coaching model. That's going to be the most successful. That is evidence-based practice. So, push yourself to be uncomfortable because you're going to grow so much through this.
Yes, that's great. And I appreciate that you had taken that mindset, one, being such a new therapist, which is super, 2, never doing this before and just being like, you know what, I'm going to learn what I can learn, and then we have to get started. There's no possible way that we can learn everything we need to know before we start. And this is kind of a common thread in therapy. I mean, even thinking back to when you were in school, maybe as you were doing clinicals, that level of uncomfortableness or uncertainty, and you got through that. So you've already done this, and probably not too long ago, maybe some of us a little bit longer. I've been a clinician for 20 years, so it's been a little bit longer. But nonetheless, we have experiences that we have gone through, and those uncertainties that we're feeling, the parents are feeling too. So Caroline, do you want to speak to a little bit about maybe how you prepare the families for your sessions and what has been working for you?
Sure. Yeah. So typically, a day or 2 days before, I kind of just check in, see that they're, ready for our scheduled time. If I change the schedule, I always confirm with them that this kind of works for them. Or, you know, if I want to see them during a specific routine that I heard during the IFSP was really tough for them, I might say, okay, you know, what time are you guys doing dinner? Or, you know, what is your hardest routine and what time are you doing that? Let me kind of just check in and see what that looks like. So, I mean, first and foremost, getting that consent from parents. I personally have had not much difficulty with that, but I know, you know, from reading some Facebook threads, there has been some difficulties from families getting that buy-in, especially because it is, you know, some people think, oh, it's just like FaceTime. Like, how is this going to benefit me? But the point is you really need to kind of sell that parent coaching and really kind of hit the nail on the head about, you know, I'm only with you in general when we're physical, maybe 1 hour a week, and you're with your child the rest of that time. So this gives me an opportunity to teach you, you know, and kind of model for you some skills to make you feel more comfortable doing this when I leave. So it really is kind of a really raw session, and you really kind of, it's nice because you get very close with the families, and it's going to be different for every single family. So especially the way that you approach things, some parents might be a little bit more reserved, some might be gung-ho. So I think moving to teletherapy has been super effective for parents because, you know, it kind of allows them to be the person who's providing that therapy, which, you know, sometimes we're professionals and we're a little bit more maybe type A, type B, type A. So it's harder for us to kind of sit back and watch, but, you know, this is kind of what we need to be doing. And I found it to be super effective. So getting that consent is super important. You really need to make sure that you sell it. You know, don't be like, oh yeah, you know, it's just kind of like FaceTime, because they might not understand what that means. You really need to explain what a session is going to look like, you know, how you're going to prepare them. You maybe give them some confidence. A lot of them might be a little freaked out that, you know, we're sitting here and we're watching them versus, you know, in the past they were sitting in and maybe, you know, helping every once in a while, but this is completely different for them too. So it's very important to just kind of give them the confidence boost that they need, and that, you know, this is going to be okay. You're going to be great. So I will typically text them or email them, whatever is best for them, you know, call them a day before, just confirming our appointment time. And then, you know, 2 hours, 3 hours before our session, I send them the link. So it's kind of like a reminder. Unless they're like a 7 a.m. family, then I would send them the link the night before. But I have had very few no-shows, and the parents that have no-showed have texted me and apologized because they just completely forgot about the time. And, you know, these are times when we can be super gracious towards families too, because they have a lot more that they're, you know, having to deal with. So, you know, some have lost their jobs, some have multiple children at home. So I think right now it's especially important to be compassionate towards these families. If they are no showing, you know, if it's a multiple thing, then maybe have a conversation and see, is this really something that you're interested in? And if you're not, that's okay. It's okay. You know, we are still very lucky to be able to be in a profession right now and have a job and make money is one thing that I remind myself. So some of these families, we just have to think about where they're coming from. And, you know, if teletherapy is not something that they feel comfortable doing, no matter how much you talk to them about it, then that's okay. You know, you want families that feel like this is going to, you know, they're going to be comfortable with this, or else it's going to be really, really difficult for them. So that's kind of the way that I go about setting them up and preparing them for what's going to kind of, you know, go on. Some of them I might text them and say, hey, I would like for you to, you know, try to have a puzzle or, you know, some bubbles ready. Let me see what it looks like when you interact with your kids in a natural environment when I'm technically not there. So, you know, you can turn your video off, you can turn your sound off, watch for about 10-15 minutes, you know, pop back in, give them some feedback, tell them what they did a really great job on. Definitely start with that. That's super important. Because again, this is so new for them. Whereas, you know, we do this every day. Mm-hmm. So, you know, people aren't always used to getting criticisms or critiques. So it's really important to start with the amazing stuff that they're doing. And then in a kind way say, try this out next time. You know, I want you to try this and let's see how your child responds to that. So instead of saying, you know, I want you to do this, try to phrase it in a more constructive way that's going to be better accepted by them as a parent.
Right. And I think that's another opportunity to even ask the parent, how did they think that went? What's the parent's perception of that activity? Are they even aware of what's going on? So I agree with you for sure to when you're doing that coaching model, and there are a lot of resources available to you for coaching. If you're part of the early intervention Facebook group, you have access to the Padlet for Early Intervention Colorado, which has a whole bunch of coaching information on there. But highlighting what you saw was what was going well, but also getting that parents' feedback directly of what they felt went well or not in that activity. Mm-hmm. And you do have a very unique perspective as that ominous observer. So one thing that I've noticed a lot when I am in session right there directly with the child, I'm maybe feeling a lot with my body, what's going on with them, but I'm not getting a very good overview of what's happening. And here gives us a perfect opportunity. I pick up on so many like little small things with the position of their foot or how they move their body. And then I have the luxury now too of just keeping notes, as opposed to in the home, usually I'm the one hands-on. I don't get a chance to keep notes as much as maybe sometimes the speech therapist do. But so it does give us another perspective. And I wanted to kind of circle back around. You talked about the first couple of sessions being a very raw session. And I think that's important to emphasize as a clinician, to give ourselves permission to have that. Give the parents permission to just play and to not worry about that someone's watching you. Just, even if they have to turn themselves to the side so that they don't see that camera, I'll set my parents up on a stage. So I'll ask them to put out a blanket, and if they can move the camera so that they can see that entire space, then I know that anywhere on that blanket that they go with their child, I'll be able to see them without having to tell them, oh, I can't see you, I can't see you. And so that cuts down on a lot of one option would be to do sports casting, which in an in-person session might be more appropriate. Online, I think it's a little distracting to be giving constant feedback. So I agree with you, Caroline. I do usually provide my feedback after the task is over instead of sports casting throughout. But it's up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with and what works for that child. And just knowing that you're going to have some errors, you're going to have some mistakes. And I want to speak to the difference between having the session be the same as in person and being an equivalent service. So, like to me, and I'll get your opinion on this, it's not going to be the same session because I'm not physically there and I'm not doing it. But that doesn't mean that it's not an equivalent service. And what I mean by that is I'm still able to assess what the child is doing, assess what the parent interaction looks like, provide feedback using my other senses, and progress that therapy activity to the next point or problem solve so that we can get what the child is currently doing shaped into more of what we want. What would you say about that when therapists might say to me, it's not the same as in person?
Yeah, I totally agree. It is not the same as in person. And, those first couple weeks are going to be, like I said, uncomfortable. And, you might fail, but that's okay. This is kind of the time to fail because you're learning something new. I agree. The session should be very equivalent to in person. And sometimes I even think that these sessions can be equivalent or better just because of that parent coaching piece that, we might not be as clinicians. Some of us are super strong with it. Some of us are not very strong with it. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I feel like in doing teletherapy, I've become so much stronger at that because at the end of the day, like I said, we see these kids for 1, maybe 2 hours a week, maybe every other week. So yeah, it's important for them to interact with us, but it's way more important that they're doing these same things with their parents and that their parents feel the confidence in doing these things when we're gone. So, I definitely agree. It's not the same as being there and being able to, manipulate the session, the setting. We're very strong at understanding what we need to take out of the visual field or, if everything's on the floor, we need to put it in a box. We understand those things. and that's great, but that knowledge is no good if we're not sharing that with these families. So, you know, if you see something and you know, okay, if I was there, this is what I would do, don't feel afraid to kind of say, hey, you know, I noticed that you guys have a lot of toys out, and I'm wondering if that's a little distracting for your child. You know, here are some suggestions that I do to help kind of clean up the space so that they can sit and attend for a little bit longer. So like Christine was saying, it's super important that these services are equivalent, but you also have the power to make them better, because, you know, you're personally pushing yourself to be more uncomfortable and do things you haven't done before. And so before, I mean, you haven't even seen, you know, how effective is this going to be? And now you're having the chance to, you know, take that backseat approach in a sense, you know, and see how effective you can be when you're not physically there. And I will say I've seen some really amazing things where I find myself just kind of smiling at the camera, because you see these parents interacting with their children. And, you know, at first you can tell it's a little uncomfortable for them, especially like Christine was saying, knowing that we're kind of all knowing and we're sitting here and we're watching them. But you'll notice within 20 minutes, they become so much more natural and so much more at ease. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things to see, is them feel the power and the confidence of taking your suggestions and applying them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing that you can do is, with parents' permission on Zoom, I know, I'm sure other platforms as well, you have the option to record. So kind of like what we're doing now, but I always say, you know, what's going to matter is we're our biggest critics. So if you can watch yourself give therapy, you can see what an amazing job you're doing. And you can also kind of take that step back and say, oh, wow, I wish that I would have done XYZ right there. Or, oh, wow, you know, she told me to do this and I didn't even try to apply it. So, you know, put that on your parents, see if they want to be recorded, and don't be afraid to do that, because, you know, we as clinicians in grad school, I was recorded many times. And watching back has been the most valuable, you know, learning experience for me. Cause I'm like, first of all, it's a little cringy. You're like, ooh, okay. But then you sit there and you're like, whoa, I did awesome on this. Or, whoa, okay, I could have done this here. So, you know, have your parents see if they want to be recorded, and then send it to them and say, okay, next session, we're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about what you did amazing on and what you think you can improve on.
Absolutely.
You know, that takes some of that, you know, stress, or that, oh, I'm not really sure how to go about this, off your shoulders, because this is super constructive what you're doing. And it's super constructive for the parents too, because, you know, it's really good to see how you're interacting and, you know, what you can improve on. So that's another option too for parents.
Yeah, for sure. You can also take a screen capture of your screen and share that. So a lot of times for positioning, so if the family didn't agree for video, or you don't have that capability, you can take a screen capture. And I always, on my Mac, I always forget how to do that. Let me see if I can do that here. Shift Command 3. It's not working. Why not?
It's Shift Command 4.
Oh, it just worked right there. I didn't do it. Shift Command 4 will allow you to crop it immediately. Shift Command 3 will just take the whole screen. So depending on what you want to do. But yeah, I guess sometimes when I hit it, I don't hit it exactly right. You do have to, it's like Shift Command 3, like all in a little row, not together. So I just took a screenshot of us right now. So if you wouldn't mind, let me share my screen, Caroline. This will be a little bit odd just because you'll see us. So you can share your whole desktop or a particular picture. And I just shared my whole desktop. So let me find that screenshot here. Okay, so there it is. That's a great picture of us there. And so on Zoom and on other options, you can annotate the screen. And so let me pull up my annotation. There's my annotation button. So I can grab a spotlight or an arrow, and then I can talk to the family about, yeah, I can see how that earbud is right in your ear right there. Next time, why don't we go ahead and take it out and we'll put it over your earlobe or whatever we might not need to say. Or I'm looking in the background here and I see this green bag. I wonder what we can do with that activity. So you can obviously, you know, highlight that type of stuff. I can draw on my screen here. So instead, if I wanted to indicate something that Caroline was doing, I could, I love your smile today, Caroline, or whatever it is. So you can use your tools that you have in the share screen to really teach and to educate. There are different options on different platforms, like BlueJ is one that allows you to do an actual goniometric measurement. And this is obviously very crude here, but from a physical therapy standpoint, if I wanted to take a look at her posture or a different alignment, I could get out and measure my with my goniometer this angle. I know it's not 100% accurate, but that would be one way. If I was looking at leg length or something like that, I would be able to kind of take a look and say, well, look at that. Your left shoulder is higher than your right. Let's see if we can work on that, Miss Caroline. So these are some options for us to use the technology to help us make it an equivalent visit. Speaking specifically to the recording, I think recording is awesome. It does add a little bit extra layer of privacy and security when you are sharing that. At this point, I would just go ahead and delete that screenshot off of my phone, but I can use it right in my session as a teaching tool. Let's go on to some other teaching tools that you use, Caroline, in your sessions.
Sure. So kind of going into it, I think to myself, when I do go into these homes, what am I doing? Or, I'm introducing songs. I don't typically do flashcards, but I know speech therapists that do flashcards, or, we're doing a Mr. Potato Head, or we're reading books. So you kind of have to think, okay, how can I do all these things virtually? So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll show you a couple of things that I have popped up, some different options. Okay, so you can see on my screen, I've got a couple different options. So you can read a book. YouTube has great books that read aloud. And let's see. Here is a boom card. So I'll kind of go more in depth with those. That is kind of goes along with the book. So when you read a couple pages, you can ask the kid, he wants a cookie. Okay. You can say, because he wants a cookie, he wants a glass of milk. So these are for kind of those older, closer to 3 kids. And you'll know which kids this will work with and which kids this will not work with. And if you don't know, just try it out. You might find out, whoa, I didn't know that they'd be able to do that, but they have shown me that they can do this. This is awesome. I just learned something completely new. Another thing you can do, here are some songs. You can put some songs on. One thing that I like to do is play a little bit of a song if I'm working with kids and we're working on either signs or, simple requests. I might play the song a little and then stop it and make a big commotion like, uh-oh, and have them work on, asking me for more. Maybe we learn the new sign for music. We can do play. So there's kind of a lot of really great opportunities to add language into things that you were doing physically and things that you can now do virtually. Let me show you these boom cards. So a lot of these are free. They have a lot of really great free options. So right now, a Boom membership is free until I believe June. And so if you're looking, you can go to the store. Let's see. Well, I had looked up something. You can do, price low to high, and all the free ones will pop up. You also have the option to go over here, store. Well, maybe it won't do it, but anyways, you can kind of type in what you're looking for. So you can see I've looked up articulation games, build-a-scenes, things for AAC, and they'll pop up. You can do the same thing, price low to high. And then if you're like, ooh, I really like this AAC on, we can work on with kids who have these devices. And again, you're kind of coaching the parents, you're facilitating the activity through them, but you can just add it to your library. They're super interactive. One of my favorite ones that kids really love, let's see, you can type in here, potato. This one cost a couple points, but again, if you are typically working with Mr. Potato Head, this is a beautiful one. You can do labeling, you can do object function, following directions. You can build a potato with these kids. So you can have them ask, I want, plus a body part. You also have the option to share your remote on Zoom. So you can go up here, you can give your remote control to someone. So I could give it to Christine right now and she can control it from her side of things. So, you can have your kids controlling it from their side of things and you can kind of facilitate the language through them.
That's true as long as the family's not on a cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So from Zoom at least, and I would imagine most applications are this way, when the provider is starting from a computer, laptop, or even a tablet like an iPad, you can give control to someone who is on an equivalent device, but not a phone.
Mm-hmm. That's great to know. Okay, good. So, and you can have the parents kind of help the kids. I found that kids are a little bit more interactive when they have the opportunity to try. If they're on like a laptop, it might be a little harder for them if they don't have a mouse to kind of do that dragging, but the parents can do it, which is, you know, another level of super cool for the kids and keeps them a little bit more engaged. Another really great resource, if you like to do a lot of book reading, is Scholastic Learning.
Mm.
So, you know, these, for me, at least since I'm in the clinic, I'm seeing kids a little bit older. So I'm having to think about activities for kids over 3 and also activities for under 3. But I feel like all kids, well, not all, but most kids really enjoy listening to books. So you could go to pre-K, they give you kind of different topics. So day 1 can be rabbits. And so the book on the left is a read aloud, and the book on the right is not a read aloud. You can select that option, but it could be really nice to show some pictures and talk about what you're seeing. So if you're working on just vocabulary, expressive language, you know, you can work on bunny, eyes, nose, ears, you know, working on different body parts. So it's really cool. Oh, he's eating. You can work on verbs, flower, colors. So books you can still do these books. Let's see. Another really great resource is Laura Mize. If you haven't heard of her as a speech therapist, she is fabulous. So she's got a bunch of different videos. You can even pop these up and play them with the parents, you know, play a couple little clips and then stop it and say, okay, I want you to try to, you know, model that. I want you to try to recreate that. And then we can talk about it. So, you know, speech therapy with ball toys, giving choices, bubbles. There's a lot of really, really great videos here. Pretend to play with baby dolls, outside equipment. So I found these videos to be super helpful for me as a clinician and kind of learning how to apply some of these strategies. But I also often find myself sending these to parents and saying, hey, just watch this video. You're going to learn so much from it. You can learn how to apply farm animals, Twister even. So if you're not watching Laura Mize's videos as a speech therapist, I would suggest you do, because there's a wealth of knowledge to learn from her. And she also has videos that can be used for CEU courses and credits. So,
well, that's great. How do you spell her last name?
That doesn't hurt. Mize.
Mize. That's wonderful. And I would imagine for, you know, early childhood special educators as well, this would be a really great resource. And I mean, even from a standpoint of PT and OT, particularly when we are the only discipline in the home, but we're identifying a need in play, these would be excellent resources to send families to just educate them on what we're looking for in the engagement. You mentioned about the boom cards, which I think is fantastic. And even for those kiddos who aren't able to follow the instructions of tapping the screen, or they don't have that access, I think as a speech therapist, it's wonderful, because if they want to see that happen after maybe you show them a couple of times, they're going to be motivated to use that word or that sign. Or you can, like you said, directly let the parent know what cues you want them to say. Yesterday in the session, you did a phenomenal job of modeling what you wanted the parent to do, and then have the parent do it there exactly as you modeled it, which was great, because the mom really had a clear understanding of what you wanted her to do. And then last thing I wanted to say about the books, I use books in my sessions all the time, in person and in home, especially for a parent who maybe is more uncomfortable reading to their child, or you've noticed or you wonder how they're reading to the child. This is a great way for you as a therapist to model exactly what you want. And then I would encourage, just like I would in home, to keep it simple as far as 1 or 2 teaching points. Like maybe it's your inflection of your voice, or maybe it's the fact that you want to highlight the verbs. Because when we tell the parents everything that we know at once, they are overwhelmed themselves and they didn't hear anything you said, or what they did hear is not what you said.
Yep.
So
yeah, and that's a really good point.
Right. Just be mindful of how you are coaching, and in your head, like you said, Caroline, you have a plan of like your goal or emphasis for the session, and just stick to those 1 or 2 emphasis. Yesterday I felt kind of bad because I did kind of give mom more than that. as I was typing up the recap, I'm like, we did way more than I needed to.
We did do a lot yesterday, but
yeah. So reflecting on that for myself, doing that session recap, typing it out in my note, and then I copied and pasted it and texted it to both Caroline and Mom to help my partner know what we're focusing on in case they have any sessions independently, but also it's just a really good way for me as a therapist to reflect on that. And Becky Colehill speaks about that too in the video trainings. That session recap really helps emphasize the key points of the session, because we often do a lot. And then it helps me as a therapist recognize, all right, that was too much. Next time I'm going to pare it down to just one or two of those amazing things that they did.
Yeah.
All right. What else would you like to share with us?
I can definitely kind of add an extra note to that is typically I will also be taking notes, and, I'm taking notes on what kids say by themselves, what kind of sounds they're saying, what they're imitating. I will write down points of things that I observed that I really liked that the parent did. And then I'll also write kind of notes of things that we can kind of apply and work on for the next week. So that's kind of my same way of keeping that checks and balance of, we went over 4 different things for them to do. That's a lot of stuff. So, keeping it to 1 or 2 major things, let's apply it throughout the session. And then, don't be afraid to apply that same premise to something different the next session. So the kiddo that we work with, I've really been working on with Mom, that receptive identification. So holding up 2 puzzle pieces, asking, where's the cow? And seeing if first he can understand what the cow is, because he has to understand it before he's going to use it. So we've really been working on we did it with some puzzles. We did it with a song, Old MacDonald. So kind of that same theme of the farm animals. And then I had her do a round of just receptive. Let's get an idea of what things he knows, what things he can identify. And then the next round, those things he can identify, let's see if he can start to label them. So hold up just one of them. So between 2 sessions, the first session, we worked on this kind of hierarchy with Old MacDonald, the song. And then the second session, we worked on it with farm animal puzzle pieces. So that's really going to help them is if you can find the same thing and apply it to a bunch of different activities, because for us, we're thinking, okay, wait, how else can we apply this? And for parents, that might not come as natural. It might be a little bit more difficult for them to think, okay, great, she gave me this really great hierarchy of how I should try to prompt my child for a song, but I can't think about how to apply that to anything else. So show them, spend a couple weeks on the same strategy, but apply it to different activities, different routines, show them how they can use it. And that's going to be super successful for them, because, that's going to help them understand how to apply this no matter what activity it is. And that's where you're going to see some of that progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say that's, that generalization of skills. So as therapists, we get very comfortable at the child doing it with this one-to-one support. Mm-hmm. And because we're not there the rest of the time, we don't know what's going on in their more natural environment without so much support. We tell the parent they should do this, but we really don't get to see what's happening. Or the parent will come back and say, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. It didn't work. And I'm frustrated because every time I try it, it doesn't work. Well, we weren't there. We didn't get to see exactly what the parent did. Now we have that opportunity to really see why that didn't work. And I'm not blaming the parents, but most likely it's because the level of demand that the parent placed on the child was either confusing or too much or not exactly what we said. And so here's our opportunity to troubleshoot that, because we know that child can do this skill one-to-one. And there's some reason why the child isn't doing it with the parent. And it's not the child's fault. It's something about the environment, right? And so we have a nice opportunity here to better shape the environment, better support the child so that learning does take place and can be transferred to different skills. And we can do that directly in real time with the parent and help figure out, is it the parent that's feeling stressed? Boy, I'm noticing that the parent is starting to talk faster or trying to rush through this or getting frustrated with the child. Then we just need to stop and have a conversation with the child, with the parents about our expectations, or maybe just the fact that we don't have that expectation that you have right now for the child.
Mm-hmm.
You can pull up developmental grids, you can pull up a hierarchy and share some education with them. And this gives us a chance to really see that breakdown of where the interaction with the child and the parent, or the child and caregiver, is falling away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, and kind of going off of that, let me share that I think it's really important to meet the child where they're at. And like Christine was saying, sometimes parents have expectations that are up here, and we know that developmentally that child is not ready for those expectations. So, Laura Mize, she's the guru, always is talking about, back it up, take a step back. This is okay. It's okay. I should have a form here somewhere that I want to share with you guys if I can find it. But it is from, here we go.
And as she's doing that, I'll just, if you're in the session and you're looking for something that just kind of popped into your head and you can't find it, don't stress about it. Make a little note, find it for the next visit, and you can lead with that. Or text it to the parent, and then you can go over it the next time. I will say, yesterday I had kind of a negative experience doing that with the family. I had forgotten to text the parent the picture of the exercise immediately after our last session, which I do try to do. So I sent it to her about 10 minutes before this next session. It completely threw her off. It threw her off so much that when we got on, she told me she couldn't do the session. So I learned from that, and the parent was upset with me that I did that, and I was merely just trying to share the education from the previous session, but that it was enough to set her off that she refused the session. And I learned that this particular mom is having some stress right now, and that definitely I can't control the rest of her day, but I know that giving her new information or review information close to the time we're supposed to meet, and that she is thinking that she has to look at that right now, was not serving her. So I'll know not to do that next time. And I'll know to either just let it go and pick it up in the next session, or just trying to kind of check in with the parent maybe a little bit more directly, because I know that she has a lower threshold to handle this stress. Maybe there's a different caregiver who might be able to help us with the session, or maybe there's something that I haven't directly asked her as far as communication wise of what she needs to be successful. So really, again, like Caroline said, backing it up, because we are directly working now with the parent, whereas before, for whatever reason, it was maybe easier for us to just do it with the child ourselves and not directly involve the parent, which makes the session go smoothly because I can do what I want. But now we don't have that luxury, and now we're going to have to involve the parent to make this successful. So anyway.
Yeah. And I think too, when you're watching parents interact with their children, use your clinical judgment. You're going to have, maybe 3 or 4 things in your mind that you're like, ooh, I can give them strategies for this. Pick the one that's going to be most beneficial to start. So maybe even the strategy that might be, on a totem pole might be down here, because you're going to use that as your base to kind of build other strategies off of. So use your clinical judgment about what's going to be most appropriate and most efficient for the family to start with. And then, like we were saying, use that 1 or 2 sessions and then maybe add on to it. It's okay to kind of take your time with this, because, whereas us just as therapists are like, go, 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 I've got all these strategies I can implement. We're facilitating this through the parent, and they might not be comfortable doing a bunch of different strategies at once, kind of like we had talked about before. So it's okay to, use a clinician to take a deep breath and think, okay, what is going to be efficient and appropriate for this family? And let's just use that. It's okay. It's okay to slow it down. It's okay to take some steps back. This is the time to do it. And you're seeing, the child in their natural environment with someone they're comfortable with. So, if that's not going to be the most accurate picture you get of this child, I don't know what is. You have those kids that are super maybe uncomfortable or really shy, and, the parents are telling you one thing. I would trust what they're saying. They know their child very well. And this gives you a chance to actually see what the child is capable of when you're not there.
Yep.
So this is Laura Mize's 11 skills that toddlers need to master before words emerge. If you're a speech therapist, you're probably familiar with this, but if you're another discipline, this might be something completely new to you. Or you might have something very similar within your profession that, this makes sense. So there are 11 skills. And so typically what I'll do with parents, especially if you're doing an evaluation and you've never met this child before, I have not personally done that on teletherapy. All of the kids that I'm working with, I have worked with before in person, but this is a really great thing to go over. What skills do they have? What skills do you need to work on? And that's what I mean about taking those steps back. If a child can do steps, 1 through 8, but can't do 9, 10, 11, okay, where you need to start. You need to start at 9. You need to start at 10. You need to start at 11. You need to, bring in different elements from all of these skill sets because, this is developmental. I always explain it to parents as if you're learning math, you need to first learn what the numbers are before you're going to be able to add them up. So it's kind of this like hierarchy.
Caroline, that speaks to a great thing too about kiddos who are doing skills 7 through 11, but aren't doing skills 1 through 6. And
those splinter skills, some of those earlier ones.
And catching back up with that and just being curious with the family about, well, I wonder why that is. And maybe we can explore that a little bit more. Parents too, they want their kids to progress. Everybody wants their kid to walk. Everybody wants their kids to talk like that. They want that end, but we can help them, especially with a chart like this. And I have some for physical therapy as well. And say, listen, we need to capture these first so that these next skills will come more easily. It's not to say that our kids can't progress, but they're going to struggle with those other more advanced skills because they don't have these underlying foundational skills here first.
Exactly. Let me see. There's one other thing that I wanted to pull up, but I cannot currently find it. So let me just show you kind of when I end my sessions, this is typically what I do. So for instance, I will end my session. I kind of go over the notes that I've taken with the parents. So I might say, okay, these are the things that we've talked about today. These are the words that I heard them imitate. These are the words that I heard them say. And it's amazing when you keep track of all that, when you're replaying them back, you're like, whoa, this kid said 15 words today. I think sometimes we're just like, yeah, they said cat, they said dog, they said cow. But when you take the chance to write them down and then say them back to the parent, you're like gasping for air. You're like, they said cow and they said dog and they said, like, whoa, this child said so many words today. This is amazing. So I just kind of recap. I recap the things that I loved that I saw, when I was observing. I loved that you did this, this, and this. These are some things that let's try for the next week. Typically, I might send them something like this. And if we have a place for resources, I'll post these on there. But for instance, if you want to play with blocks, this kind of sets up the session for you. It helps the parents feel more comfortable because this essentially is saying, okay, these are action words you can work on. I mean, you can even work on things simpler like block and up, but if a child is more advanced and you're stuck on where to go from there, you can work on action words. You can work on different ways to describe things, how to expand the vocabulary, play and social skills. So I will send this to a parent and I'll say, I want you to pick 1 or 2 activities from this list that you would like to work on next week. And I'm going to help you facilitate some of this language through that. So, obviously this might be too tough for some of the kids, but it gives them a good idea of things that they can describe or, how to work on those play and social skills. So that's another option too, is sending them a follow-up of, okay, this is what we're going to do next week. I want you to look through and pick some things you want to do because you're helping them understand what to expect. You're still having a little bit of it in your control of saying, okay, let's work on one of these 6 activities, but you're also giving them the choice to choose. And how important is that? Super important. So they feel way more comfortable picking one of those things. And you feel comfortable too, knowing what to prepare for the session to help these families the most.
I agree. And a lot of times we'll ask the families, well, what would you like to work on? And it's a very open-ended question as thinking that they, of course, must have something that they want to work on. And one of 3 things is going to happen. Either they're going to give us something that is appropriate, they're going to give us something that has nothing to do with anything that we're working on, or they're going to say something that is not developmentally appropriate for the child. And so by kind of narrowing that field down and giving them a list of options that would work for them, will help them kind of reframe what their focus of what the question that you're asking them. Again, we are looking at this through the lens of a therapist, and perhaps you might have the benefit of being a parent as well, but maybe not. And I do know, and Vicki McInerney and I spoke about this on a different podcast episode, how much our therapy sessions changed after we became parents, but not everybody has that ability. Yeah. So just knowing that parents don't always know what to work on. Parents don't always know how to play with their child. And so giving them a reduced field of options to choose from, like you said, can empower the parent, can allow them to have some choice, just like we're providing the child choice, and can help them feel more comfortable about answering that question for you the next time.
Yeah. And I think it's super important, even if you spend, your first session and you're really working with the parent on feeling confident about this change in therapy, that's going to be super important for them too, because you want them to feel confident, especially with you as a clinician. You want to feel like they trust you so much that they're going to try whatever you say. And like I said, there's going to be different styles of teaching. We all have different styles of learning. So, it forces you to think outside the box of, okay, how can I best verbalize this to a parent that's going to make sense to them, that's not going to be too overwhelming for them. So as much as we're thinking about the child in teletherapy, I almost think we're thinking about the parent more. Yeah. Because that's who we're filtering all of this information through. And like Christine was saying, we're thinking of this from a total therapist lens. I can't even tell you how many times I'm describing something to somebody and I have to be told, okay, Caroline, put that, I really don't understand what you're trying to tell me, because my brain is so set for therapist mode that it's okay to, again, take a step back, think about how you can phrase this stuff so that it's going to be easily comprehended, because we use a lot of jargon sometimes, so it's really important to also have that self-reflection of yourself when you finish a session. Think about, okay, how did that go? What could I have done differently as a therapist? Okay, I failed in this aspect. This kid was not engaged at all. Yes, it's important for the parent to engage their child, but it's important for you to give strategies to help those parents engage. So again, a lot of this, it's like a 3-step system: the child, the parent, you as the therapist, and all of it has to be one big self-reflection, and it all runs together. So I know this is kind of something totally new for a lot of you. It's very new for me. So I just want to commend everybody for stepping outside of their comfort zones, especially in a very unsettling time when other things personally might be going on that are not comfortable. So just know that this is going to make you a better clinician. And for those who have been in the field for a while, this might even feel more uncomfortable because you're so used to doing things a certain way, or what's comfortable, what's working, and then you just got thrown into a cyclone of holy cow, all this is so new. So, it's okay to give yourself some grace during this time. I like to give myself grace and okay, yeah, that wasn't a great session. I know that I can do better, but I also know that I can give myself grace because I've never done this before. So, whether you've done this for many years or this is your first week, or whether your state hasn't approved it yet and you're kind of waiting to hear if you can do it, it's going to be okay. You're going to learn a lot, and you've just learned a very valuable asset. This is a totally different therapy model, and you're learning how to do it, and that's awesome. So give yourself some grace.
Absolutely. And so we can kind of reflect on that a little bit here as we close up for today. First, I just want to thank Caroline for your time and all of your advice and suggestions and the resources, a lot of resources that I, as a physical therapist, didn't know about. So that's phenomenal. Help me too in this kind of collaborative, multidisciplinary model, which especially as early intervention providers, I really want to encourage you guys too, even if it's just to take a couple of sessions and a way to have a touch point with your family for those who are resistant to coming online. Just talking about the importance of making sure that checking in with your family and seeing if there are any routines overall that aren't working well with you. If you are in the early intervention system, we have access to service coordinators. We have access to other disciplines that can help support, even if that's not your primary role for this family. So really making sure that, especially at this time when there's changes in routines and changes in family dynamics that we can help support our families, because that is the purpose of early intervention services, is to help, how do we help support the family, support the child? And so that's a little bit different than the clinic model, but even if you are in a clinic, why aren't we taking that approach as well, right? It doesn't have to be only in the realm of early intervention. Yes, I am a physical therapist, but I have enough knowledge of development of speech and language, fine motor, sensory, adaptive, to at least identify a problem. I'm not the one treating the problem directly, but I can absolutely learn things from Caroline and implement them into my sessions. And we can still do that online, and we can have co-visits. And if you're a little bit nervous about that, jump online with a therapist and practice. Mm-hmm. And if you're nervous about providing a telehealth session at all, practice, record that session, so that even if you don't have the capability or the consent to record the actual session with the child, record a session with a family member. Set up your own cell phone to record the session if you can't record on the computer, so that you can play that back and have that self-reflection. And like Caroline said, be grateful for this opportunity that we still can be employed and can still work, because if we are in the hospitals right now, or acute rehab or skilled nursing facilities, we may be laid off. There's definitely many people on Facebook right now saying that they were laid off because the census is too low. And yes, it's true that I was only able to see 78% of my caseload last week due to cancellations or no-shows, but I had 78% of my caseload seen. So you have that permission. If you are struggling with this, try some of those strategies. Also, go ahead and write down or journal a little bit about your concerns. Even if it's just some words about like anxiety, or how am I going to facilitate this online? Just acknowledge that you see this as a concern. And maybe right now, that's all you need to do, is just acknowledge that you're having these concerns. Sometimes when we start to feel anxious or we feel overwhelmed in the moment, no longer are we in calm and alert. No longer are we able to identify solutions to problems. And this is the case for ourselves as therapists, and this is the case for our families and our kids. So why can you give advice to other people so easily? Because you're not in the moment, because you're able to have this broader picture. How can we do that for ourselves? We can create some space between impulse and action through some time, through letting that go and stepping away from a moment and taking a few breaths. So if you follow me through other things, you know, I teach the 5-finger breath, just tracing your fingers. Another one that I did a meditation the other day was to actually, instead of expanding and inhaling and then contracting and exhaling, which is how we typically teach breath, they actually said to contract and think about, visualize the air coming down into your body and having that sensation of the breath entering you on the inhale, and then exhaling it out and expanding on the exhale, which correlates with the fear paralysis reflex and can really help us.
I love it. I love this.
Right? Move forward in our life when we're feeling stuck, when we're feeling frozen. So I encourage you, and to me, I visualize light a lot and visualize color. And so to me, I was visualizing a stream of ribbon or light coming in. For me, it was yellow. And then exhaling out this blue, green light, and whatever color comes to your head, if that comes for you. But I'm seeing this kind of ribbon. So, you know, we're all sensory beings. We learn through our 10 senses. We can have a different conversation a different day about that. So use whatever sense makes sense to you, what you feel comfortable with, and take this time to journal, take this time to sit quietly and just reflect. You don't have to change it. You don't have to find a solution right now, but identify where are your barriers, identify your hard stops. And then we can come back later and kind of look at that. So Caroline, you are amazing. And I really commend you for just jumping in there. I've done a lot of telehealth sessions since 2013, and I would say that you just give you that compliment, are an amazing clinician in person, but also online. So if someone doesn't like Caroline, you're not going to like her in person or online, but I like her either way. So we'll keep her around.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I think this was, again, even before I came on this, I took some deep breaths because doing something like this is so new to me too. So I think this is a time to be uncomfortable and to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when you look, even a week in advance and think back to this past week, you're going to think, look at how much I've grown. So those are kind of those little mementos that you need to really just pay attention to. How am I growing? And look at how far I've gone even in just this last week, all these hurdles that I've crossed. So thank you for having me, Christine. I think this was wonderful, and you guys can all do it. You're going to do amazing, and just have confidence. It's going to go great.
Awesome. All right. You have a great rest of your day.
Bye.